From beautiful British Columbia, you're watching John Lovelace's West Coast Escapes.
Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be. Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be.
On today's show, we visit the small town of Grand Forks to visit BC's only full-time canoe restorer. John takes a 40-minute flight to discover a dream property in the Caribbean of the Caribou. And we learn how to live off the land at an interactive First Nations site in Cache Creek.
Let's blue sky, let's imagine, let's get a dream of how good things can be.
Closed captioning brought to you by the Caribou-Chilcotin Coast Tourism Region in supernatural British Columbia.
You know, over the years, I've developed a real passion for the old canvas-style canoes, and when I found out that there was a man restoring them in Grand Forks, which is a pretty little town right on the foothills of the Kootenays, I decided I'd have to jump in a Navajo and go and visit him.
Canoes are a quintessential piece of Canadian iconography and often bring back childhood memories of summer spent on the lake. While many newer canoes are made of aluminum and fiberglass, old wooden canvas frames are still at the heart of the Canadian experience. In Grand Forks, British Columbia, one man is helping to keep the tradition alive by restoring antique canoes to their former glory. Meet Mike Elliott, owner of Kettle River Canoes. Mike takes clients' old canoes and restores them by hand, mending ribs, stretching canvas, and re-waterproofing them. The results are canoes that are works of art, as well as functional watercraft. To find out more about Mike's work, we followed him down to the shores of the Kettle River for a paddle in one of his restored vessels. Mike played the tour guide as we floated down the river.
Yes, the Kettle River, it starts up around Big White near Kelowna. And it's one of the only rivers in BC to travel east-west. So around here in Grand Forks, we've got the beautiful lush forests on the north face and the sun-baked hillsides on the south face. It's a beautiful valley.
Let's go into the geography. Can you bring us back 10,000 years?
10,000 years?
Yeah.
I'm a canoe restorer. I'm not a geology expert.
Now, Mike didn't start out as a canoe restorer. He found his way to the job in a very unusual manner.
Yeah, for about 20 years, I was involved in elite level sport. My sport is fencing. I'm a fencing master.
So how did you get from fencing into canoe restoration? That's got to be an interesting story.
Well, I met my wife. I met Christy. We decided to move out here to Grand Forks, where she had lived before. And when we came here, I wanted to get back to some of the things that I was involved in as a kid. And a friend here had an old wooden canoe. He offered it to me, and I looked at a chapter in a book and worked from there. And so 6 months later, he wanted the canoe back.
Did you give it back to him?
No! I totally restored it. It looked absolutely gorgeous. Friends of friends heard that I knew how to do this, so over a half dozen years, I did as many canoes. I was looking for something to do as far as occupation, and Christy suggested that I look at the possibility of restoring canoes as a profession. A little bit of research showed that indeed people who have these canoes will not part with them. They're just looking for somebody who knows how to restore them. And as it turns out, I'm the only person in BC who is restoring canoes professionally.
How long does the process take from start to finish?
Start to finish, about 4 months. It depends on how much woodwork has to be done. If it's just throwing on a new canvas, it takes about 2 months because there's a lot of drying time. The paints and the fillers and all that sort of stuff take months to dry.
I mean, how would you know how much it was going to cost.
When I was doing it as a hobby, I kept track of how long it took me to do every single process. When I started to set up the business, I said, okay, X number of dollars per hour in the shop, and I've never been out by more than $50 in an estimate.
Well, let's talk about that can of red paint that I was holding up earlier.
Yes, that belonged to one of my clients, and he was downsizing and he didn't need all of this stuff, and he gave me an old 1970 Chestnut Canoe Company catalog along with that can of paint. And I've now taken it to my paint people, and they've thrown it into their computer, and so I can bring it up anytime I need it.
So, the big question,
Yes.
how much is the red canoe
This
worth?
red canoe, you want it?
I want it.
All right. Well, as it turns out, I do have one that's up for adoption. And for the price of the restoration, it's yours. $3,300 plus taxes.
That is a wonderful price.
Sadly, we couldn't figure out a way to buy the canoe on the show's expense account. So we had to leave the beauty behind for some other lucky paddlers. If you are fortunate enough to have an antique canoe lying around that needs some love, consider making the trip down to Grand Forks to see Mike Elliott. While a restoration takes some time, the results will be well worth the wait when you become part of the ultimate Canadian landscape.
When we return, we learn how to live off the land at an interactive First Nations site in Cache Creek.
The interior of British Columbia has been home to the Shuswap Nation for almost 10,000 years. In fact, they first ventured onto the land when the glaciers receded. Despite many struggles to deal with the arrival of Europeans in the 200 years of recent history, Native peoples have worked hard to preserve and share their culture with future generations. One place where visitors can learn more about traditional Native life is at the Shuswap Nation Interpretation Center at the historic Hat Creek Ranch. Located just north of Cache Creek along Highway 97, the ranch is a place where visitors can discover British Columbia's heritage, from First Nations culture to Gold Rush lifestyle. When we visited, our tour guide, Sandra Gaspard, gave us a review of what visitors can expect.
Well, the Shuswap Native Interpretation Center was developed by our people as a way to preserve history and culture for the younger generations. So many of our people have developed methods of showing how we would cook and preserve our foods and berries, meats, medicines. Then we move into lodgings. We were very nomadic people during the times of the spring to the fall. So we constantly traveled. Our main dwelling, though, other than trading and preserving and following the food, was to live in our villages where we had our pit houses, which we referred to as kukulis or kukulai. You would have your immediate family living with you, from grandparents to grandchildren, and stay there for a 6-month period of time. So from there, then we would go into talking about the tanning of the hides, which was the women's job. After the men return, they give the hides to the women. We're going to scrape the fat muscle tissue, stretch them, and also smoke them over the fire to make them into pliable leathers. And then we talk about the cleansing of the body as well as spirit, and that we use the sweat lodge, which is often referred to as Indian sauna.
Thousands of years before the Finns discovered the health benefits of the sauna, the Shuswap peoples were sitting in sweat lodges. It was a big part of their culture and was seen as a place to purify the body, mind, and soul through sweating. Heavy lava rocks were put in the center of the lodge, and water was poured on to create steam. Another way that people would purify themselves is with smudging, or burning sage. Now, sage is a central and integral part of the Shuswap culture.
We also use the sage for a tea for sore throat. We also use the sage as natural mosquito repellent. We put it down in areas to get rid of negativity. So in your home, you could put little pieces of the sage in the corners usually, because that's where negativity gets caught. And then it'll keep a good feeling and a good thought in your home.
Music is also an important part of the Shuswap culture, and each dance or song has a specific purpose, from telling stories to healing. The dancer often wears a costume that is integral to properly performing the dance.
The jingle dress originally was a vision of a medicine man who had foreseen this dress being made. Now this dress was worn and danced in by many to send out healing. So when we dance, we're dancing for the people in this dress. It's a medicine or spiritual dress.
While at the site, we also met native musician John Puro, who shared some of his musical philosophy with us.
All my songs are very traditional, about the elders from my community. My flute is my own, and I love to play this not only for myself but for other people who enjoy it and are going through a healing experience in life. Okay, that's why I play this drum also, for the same reasons, so that the future generations will also get to learn the songs that I sing, the flute songs that I play.
British Columbia is a beautiful landscape peopled by a rich tapestry of many cultures. While our friends south of the border refer to their society as a melting pot, Canadians prefer to celebrate the distinctions of their peoples. To understand and appreciate Native culture, there is nothing quite like getting to an interpretive center and seeing it firsthand. Now, travelers making a road trip through the Caribou region should take an afternoon off to visit Hat Creek Ranch, so that they too can experience traditional First Nations culture in British Columbia. The disappearance of old-growth forests may be one of the most serious environmental issues today. Now, estimates range that from 90 to 95% of the world's old growth has been harvested by man. West Coast Escapes discovered one of the most accessible stands of old-growth forests left in the West. It's located on Vancouver Island, and here visitors can take a stroll back in time to experience a walk through an ancient landscape of giant Douglas fir. Adara Angelucci files this report.
Cathedral Grove is in McMillan Park in central Vancouver Island. It is the last accessible giant tree forest in BC. Now, to come down Cathedral Grove's trails is like walking backwards in time. It is a way to experience and marvel at nature's beauty. The three most common trees in Cathedral Grove are the Douglas fir, the western hemlock, and the red cedar. This Douglas fir is the largest tree in the park. It is over 800 years old, 76 meters tall, and 9 meters wide. He is a very wise old big boy. Yes, I know. I don't know why we don't have more of you. Yes. Old trees like this can fall prey to many things: unlicensed logging, disease, lightning, and even bad weather. In 1997, a powerful windstorm blew through the narrow Cameron Valley to this park. The combination of high winds and wet soil conditions was too much, and hundreds of trees were toppled. This did not diminish their value, however, to the fragile ecosystem in the forest. Fallen trees open up the canopy, providing light, nutrients, and space for the next generations of growth. Plus, these upended behemoths give visitors a chance to guess their age. 104, 105, 6, 107, 108, I'm almost there. 109, 110. And see what lies beneath the soil. This gives a whole new meaning of sitting underneath the tree. Look at these cedar roots. Even standing trees can give you an inside view. This tree was burnt out 300 years ago. Some of the remaining trees use unusual methods to survive. Now this tree stump is still living thanks to a system of underground connections. The bark curling over the top is receiving nourishment even though it has no greenery to capture sunlight. It has survived by grafting its roots onto those of a nearby tree. Cathedral Grove is a spectacular place to see. It emanates a feeling of beauty, tranquility, and peace. These trees have a lot to share with you, so next time you're on Vancouver Island, come pay them a visit. When we return, John finds some stunning property in a place that locals call the Caribbean of the Caribou.
A lot of people out there might realize that I'm a real nut when it comes to machinery. And today we're going to have a look at something that I think is really neat. It's a Hitachi 120 excavator. This puppy has got an attachment on it. It's a thumb. Helps you pick up the bigger boulders. And I'm going to show you how to operate one of these. This has got a honking big, reliable diesel engine in it. I'm just going to jump up. Got to fire it up there. It's nothing to it. It's got a little friction throttle here too, so you can just sort of work it any way you like. You can see we're just fired it up right like that. But one thing about these things you got to know, if you ever want to get a job operating one of these things, before you do anything, you got to move this puppy. This is the release, so it makes it unlock the whole thing. Now, essentially, this is the easiest part because this swings the whole cab. And so I just have to move it this way. I'm going to go to the left, or I go like that and go to the right. Nothing to it. Over here, this lever operates the bucket. I'll just move it like that, and up she goes. Move it down, down she goes. If I want to turn to the left, obviously, or move it up, you go like this. Move it down, you go like this. And then the big trick, of course, is the thumb. And so how would you operate the thumb? With your thumb, and you just go like that, and away you go. So you say, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but how do you make it go? Well, that is wonderful. You just put your feet on here, and you go this way, and away you go. Actually, I'm going backwards. Obviously, if you want to go forward, you pull it back like that. Nothing to it. And the most impressive thing are these pedals right here, because that's where you sort of rest your feet. But there you have it. That's how to operate a Hitachi 120. If you want to get a job as an excavator, just say you learned it from John. Now, Green Lake is the emerald jewel of the Caribou, and it's terrific here. There's great fishing, great water sports, and it's only a 4.5-hour drive down to Vancouver. And best of all, the sun always shines on this little bit of paradise.
Green Lake is one of the largest bodies of water in the southern portion of British Columbia's Caribou region. It's close enough to Vancouver that cottages here can be accessed for a weekend getaway. On lakes further north make that option more difficult. But you don't need a cottage to enjoy this lake. There are 18 public access points, and there's a terrific provincial park. Now at the park, there's a good sand pebble beach and a shallow, warm, roped-off area of water for swimming, and there are day use areas and campground areas available at the park. The lake is about 14 kilometers long, and it's about 1.5 kilometers in width, with an irregular shoreline of approximately 60 kilometers. The open rangeland and mixed forests of aspen and lodgepole pine found here are typical of the Caribou's landscape. The area is chock full of moose and deer, and like most of Wilderness BC, there's a few black bear and coyote in the area. The west end of the lake is a nesting and migratory area.
What is the attraction on Green Lake?
Green Lake is fairly close to Vancouver, about 4.5 hours, and it's a nice drive through the Fraser Canyon. It's not the city, and you can bring your kids up, you can horseback ride. They've got trails to snowmobile on. There's 4 seasons, and this lake has a lot of wonderful fishing.
An annual restocking program of rainbow trout provides fair to good fishing opportunities here. Locally fishing is best described as challenging, so try a dark flatfish lure. When we filmed this segment, we found 2 great examples of real estate escapes here at the lake. One is a magnificent log building on a point, and the second is one of the largest vacant land acreages remaining on the lake. The log home is situated on its own peninsula, surrounded by water on 3 sides. The property is almost 4 acres. The home is handcrafted Northern Douglas fir log home. There is a separate workshop with its own 2 bedrooms and bathroom suite for guests. The property has a 3rd building. It's a historic log cabin which now serves as a 2nd guest accommodation. Green Lake waterfront is hard to find in the first place, but a property with 1,200 feet is a one-of-a-kind find. This is 52 acres. It is in the heart of a beautiful ranch land which rolls gently down to the lake, opening up to your own private bay complete with a beautiful flat sand beach. The property has been surveyed and many areas have been fenced for livestock. The property is well treed for added privacy with a pond and a creek. This property lies ready for your dream home.
Prices are very, very good, and this is one of the reasons people come up here to buy. Recreation property is at its peak. We have a lot of beautiful waterfront properties. We have actually very nice residential properties. It's a place to be.
Green Lake is a large vacation playground. It has natural clear water, it's close to Vancouver, it's surrounded by wildlife, and good, if not challenging, fishing opportunities. This week's West Coast Escape Inland Lake feature.
Looking for more information on features you've seen on today's show? Then visit our website at westcoastescapestv.com. Do you have comments or story ideas for West Coast Escapes? If so, then email us at info@westcoastescapestv.com. DVDs of West Coast Escapes TV are available by single copy or complete box set. Go to our online store at westcoastescapestv.com.
Let's blue sky.